Namaskar, and since we are in the land of Odisha, I start with Jai Jagannath. I hope and pray that the grace of Lord Jagannath is on all of us, on the country, especially when we are in the Amrit Kal. We need immense cosmic energy to take this country forward, particularly when our youth are looking for opportunities to showcase their talents. This budget is the first in the Amrit Kal, and it comes at a time when challenges which are far more from the external sources rather than from internal, which pose serious uncertainties to us. In this environment, making sure that we are able to deliver on the growth momentum which we have attained post the pandemic is the first and big challenge. And as a result, this budget continues with that momentum which we started giving through public expenditure on capital asset building. It's even now touched the double digit in reaching the level of 10 lakh crores for capital expenditure. And in that, since the last 2 years, we have been giving a significant portion of the capital expenditure outlay to the states as well. So if 2 years ago the states had a share, that share is now increased to 1,30,000 crores. So states which so desperately need to build their capital assets, particularly in terms of bringing connectivity, will have an opportunity to have interest-free 50-year loan given by the center. And I'm sure Odisha will also benefit from this item head, which they can effectively use for bringing better capital assets for themselves. Other than this, which is the main focus, the budget clearly makes several attempts to bring in inclusion so that no section of our society is left behind. I know Odisha again has a large SAST population and tribal population as well, for whom particular assistance have also been extended through the most primitive tribes, wherein we want to reach total saturation in terms of all the schemes which have been launched, whether it is the Awas Yojana, Nal Se Jal, Har Ghar Jal, or even the LED bulbs, or the wellness centers, and so on. So even if the primitive tribes are getting assistance through the tribal allocations, ministries' allocations, this special gesture during this budget for reaching saturation for the primitive groups will benefit Odisha as much as it will benefit the neighboring Jharkhand as well. So saturation is now the key word in the name of inclusion, whether you're making sure that all eligible people from the backward or the scheduled tribes and other eligible citizens get every fundamental benefits that the budgets have been focusing since 2014, will get it, so that if once the saturation is achieved, we are very clear that they will be empowered enough to take care of what they want for themselves and their families. If inclusion through saturation is being aimed at, and also developing MSMEs is another basic focus that we've had. Very many regulations or rules, very many conditions which applied for the MSMEs in doing business since the Atmanirbhar announcements of 2020 have been clearly addressing each one of these concerns to reduce the compliance burden, to be defined better, enhance definition, and also coverage for credit from banks. Also the ease of doing business from the point of view of keeping records, maintaining records, and so on. So MSMEs have definitely been the center of our developmental goals, and also making sure that MSMEs did get that good immunity, did get that coverage during the COVID period so that they don't go into liquidation. And in this budget as well, for any failure to attend to services or goods as per contracts signed with the government, if there has been a failure in completing the service as is agreed in the contract, MSMEs have been given almost 95% waiver in that their guarantees will not be included or invoked. And that would give them a relief even if they had failed to fulfill the contract as signed with, let us say, the government or government agencies in the union government's case. So only 5% would be retained, and the rest 95 of the securities which they've given will all be released. Other than that, I think a major problem which the MSMEs face is delayed payments from people, whether it's government or the private sector companies, for services rendered, for goods supplied. Normal period is about 45 days, then it was tolerated, saying 90 days. If within that 90 days you're able to do it, it's fine. But in spite of declaring the dues, the servicing of MSMEs or due payments which have to reach the MSMEs were not being done in time. So after several nudging of those private sector companies and also the government departments, more than nudging happened, and therefore they did clear a majority of the dues. But the private sector which are listed, who even put it to the MCA records that they have dues for the MSMEs, were not even clearing it up. So there was this one little step which has been taken, wherein a company which doesn't clear the bill for the MSME, in that year it cannot also claim offsets for those payments made. That I think would work as an effective way to tell the companies that you can't claim any offset just because you have put it in your record, but when you have not paid them, you are not even eligible for it any longer. So I think this step would actually mean a big difference for the MSMEs. So where they were very scared to even voice the delay and demand payments, government has come that much forward to make sure, even by regulation, we are telling the large companies, inclusive of government companies, to keep the payment well within the due time. If capital expenditure, inclusion, focus on particular tribes or segments which have not been reached. We are also looking at geographical coverages, wherein all of you are aware that 114 districts had been covered through the aspirational districts. The aspirational districts were not a separate program, but it was a separately monitored attempt to make sure that all the existing schemes reach those backward regions, backward districts in any state for that matter, even if it is a developed state. Now, going further down below the district level, 500 blocks have been identified where saturation will be attempted at the block level. So the entire attempt is, since 2014, Prime Minister Modi has been focusing on including all citizens of this country through one or the other program so that they also come at par on basic amenities and fundamental infrastructure that they should have. Now, since 14, if we are doing this, and even now if there are pockets within this country which doesn't have that kind of a comfort of having had the fundamental infrastructure reaching them. This 500 blocks that has been selected, through that when monitoring happens, if hospitals have come there, wellness centers have reached, roads are there, electricity is reaching them, is the internet facility reaching them. So by each one of these measures, when you're aiming to reach every citizen, from the top down, you're going down to the last layers of administration, we can ensure that actual inclusion takes place. So that is the emphasis given in this budget through the blocks. Since the last budget, again on education, you've seen a good considerable allotment being made. More than 1 lakh crores have been given for education from the center, while education is a center plus state subject. So each state would do their own, plus the center itself has given this 1 lakh crore. And this year, that has gone up as well. So education gets its priority as much as skilling and upskilling for our youth. Skilling and upskilling, and also in this budget a special mention is made for skilling our workers even on Industry 4.0 requirements, which means they'll have to be readied for artificial intelligence, they have to be readied for being trained for, being trained for dealing with data, deep data, using robotics, and so on. And a point which I've been repeatedly saying since after presenting the budget is, industry wants to expand. They're already going in that route. You find that many of these, this morning too, I saw one of the steel manufacturer has gone to Jammu and Kashmir, and they've started, they are laying the foundation for building one of the factories there in J&K. But all of them are also challenged because their products which get exported are measured by the green measuring yard. If steel which goes from India is not going to be green, nobody is going to import, or they levy huge barriers, which are non-tariff barriers. So every industry, even on the verge of wanting to expand and invest to expand, are now compelled to bring in technology to ensure that their production is going to be green compliant. So the workforce that they will need is not going to be the regular workforce, but the regular plus workforce. And the regular plus means the worker should be good enough for the job that he is going in, but at the same time should have greater knowledge and technique to use so that the produce that they make is green compliant. So technology-driven investments for matching with the green expectations of the global market, for which you need workers who are going to be skilled for that. That's exactly what's the special mention in the budget, where we are saying workers will be trained for meeting the challenges and the expectation of Industry 4.0. So that emphasis is also given. So when I'm saying this is the first budget for Amritkal, and this is the budget which is going to ready India's youth power, you're giving them all the skill sets which is required, not for today's India, but also for a future India. So whether it is your training, whether it's your awareness on green, whether it's your technology savviness, which you so require for nowadays, this budget addresses it all. And finally, there are enough investment and also allocations being made so that India's transition from fossil fuel to green energy is also being carefully attended to. So the incentives which have been given through the PLI for solar equipment manufacturing, also the money which has been put for laying the necessary infrastructure, for even getting solar power which is being generated in Ladakh to the mainland, to the valleys, the plains, not the hills. That requires heavy investment. Is the power being produced there already? It is getting produced, it's on the verge of getting complete production capacity utilized, but we are readying with all the infrastructure that is required for evacuating that power from Ladakh. So is the green hydrogen mission, which was announced last year in the last budget. This budget also has its own due share. You find that green ammonia as being a big attractive proposition for a lot of investors to come. So government is ahead in this curve, where we are bringing in investments in time for infrastructure to be laid, so that when produced, these renewable sources of energy will find the pathway to reach all its users. There's some more to speak on that, but I'm sure it will come out through the interaction that all of us are going to have. Finally, of course, all this is being done with the due compliance of what we had given ourselves earlier in the fiscal prudence matter. The fiscal deficit is very much within the realm which was earlier predicted through a glide path which was given 2 years ago. We are fully compliant even in that. So you find that this budget is actually truly setting the pace for Amrit Kal in covering all the segments, at the same time making sure India's growth momentum is not lost. So I'll end there. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm sure there'll be a lot more exchange during the question answers.